Hi, in the last tutorial we learnt about co-sequential processing in which we output the common names to the output file. In this tutorial we are going to study about k-way merge in which there are k number of files with certain names and we have to merge all those names into the output file, and the output file should contain all those names in ascending order. These are the 8 input files which have certain names in it. Some of the input files may also be empty. Now my job is to merge all these names into a single file in ascending order. We have already seen the two-way merge in which we merge two arrays. But how do you do this for 8 files? Let us understand this with the help of a diagram. This diagram will explain you the logic behind k-way merge. These are the 8 input files, 1.txt, 2.txt and so on up to 8.txt. Each of the file has certain numbers, but in our program we don't have numbers, we have names in our case. This is just to understand the logic. This is our output file in which we need to put our output, that is all these numbers in the input files in ascending order. What I have done is I have taken an array of size 8. In general k, when there are k files. Firstly, I am copying the first numbers from each file to the corresponding position in the array. By corresponding position, I mean I will read from file 1 only into the first position of the array, and I will read from file 2 only into the second position of the array, and so on. If a file is empty, then I will copy infinity into the corresponding position in the array. After doing this, my next step is to find the minimum element in the array. In this case it is 1, and I will copy 1 to the output file. After copying 1 to the output file, I will read the next name from file 1 because I have copied an element from the first position of the array to the output file. And I will continue this process until all the files are empty. One more important thing to notice is, suppose at some point of time I copy 7 into the output file and I am reading the next number from 6.txt, but there are no numbers left. I encounter the end of file. In that case I have to copy infinity into the corresponding position in the array. Let us simulate this logic into a program. I have opened the program for k-way merge. This function is used to check whether all the files are empty. The function is called allEmpty and it takes a parameter number. In this array number of I corresponds to the number of elements in the file number I. So our logic will be, if either one file is not empty, then all files will not be empty. I will check that condition. If any one of the element is not equals to 0, then I return 0, which means that all files are not empty. If all the numbers in the array are 0, then I return 1. That means all the files are empty. This function we are going to call in the main program. Now here is the main program. I have an array of 8 fstream objects which points to 8 files, 1.txt, 2.txt, so on up to 8.txt. This I have made a 2-dimensional array and I am storing it in fname, which is an array of strings. Number of 8 is the array which stores the number of elements in the corresponding files. For example, number of 3 gives you the number of elements in file number 3, and this is our intermediate array in which we are going to store the values read from the file, and then we are going to select the minimum element and then we are going to write to the output file. First of all, I will read some data into all the files. I will put a for loop which will run 8 times. In each iteration of the for loop, I am opening the file name I using the file descriptor file of I. I ask the user to enter a number of records and I read the records in ascending order using a for loop, and then I close that file at the end of each iteration. The next step. In this part we are initializing our temporary array. I take a for loop which runs for 8 times, and in each iteration I open the file number I using the corresponding file descriptor file of I. Then I will copy the name from the file into the array using this statement. This statement I will execute only if there are some elements in the file. I will check this condition using if number of I is not equals to 0. This array number of I we have already initialized while reading the data from the user. Look at this statement, C in number of I. If there are no elements left in the file, then I will copy ZZZZ, which is equivalent to infinity in the case of integers, into the array. Now, this part of the code is the heart of the program. I am running this while loop until all the files become empty. In each iteration, firstly I am calculating the least element in the array using this code, which I don't think I should explain you. We assume that 0th position is the position in which the minimum element is present in the array, and then we check whether there is an element which is lesser than this position, and then we update the value of minimum. In this way, I get the position minimum in which the minimum element is present in the array. I check whether at that position the number of elements left in the file are not 0. Then I will copy that particular value in the array into the output file, and I will read the next element from the corresponding file into the corresponding position in the array. At the same time, I decrement the number of elements at that position. If the number of elements left are not 0, I copy infinity into the array. My last step is of course to close all the files. I close the input files using a for loop which runs for 8 times, and then I close the output file. This is all about k-way merge. We will meet with hashing in the next tutorials. Thanks for watching.
Oh,